It occurs to me that we live in an, I don't know, unprecedented time outside of all the crazy news things that have been happening in recent history, specifically with regard to the communications that we have available to us, the constant availability of basically on the scene reporters who give us all kinds of crazy information, but mostly just the fact that anybody can get up and have a platform and have something to say. And if people like what they have to say enough, they gain a following. And it occurs to me that in this new era of communication, of breaking down of the old traditional barriers of power and all of those things, that perhaps we're reaching a point in our history where it might be possible for an average person to actually rise to the highest office in the United States of America. Could you imagine if just a random person, I don't want to say random, because obviously we want to pick somebody who has the ability to do the job, but if we were able to find somebody with the mental capability and the courage and tenacity to do the job of President of the United States, who isn't a career politician who has spent their entire life maneuvering for position, who isn't a super rich person who buys their way into office because they have enough money to campaign and convince people through advertising that they're the right person for the job, or isn't connected to all of these organizations and government entities that are able to manipulate things to their own advantage. I don't know, would we be better off as a nation by having a government that is run for the people, by the people, of the people? You know, I mean, that was the original intent of the entire republic, democratic republic process that we were supposed to have. Unfortunately, it's never been that way because we human beings are pretty shallow when it comes to, you know, deciding on who we're going to choose to lead us. We're always going to pick somebody who we find charismatic and powerful and are going to do these things. Sad as it is, human beings almost always want a king. They want somebody who's going to step in and fix their problems for them instead of, you know, all of us banding together to just fix the problem ourselves. Like, that's the right way to do it, but it's easier to just push that responsibility off on somebody else. But we now live in a time where, you know, theoretically, an average person who has no money, no power, no nothing can get up, say the right things in the right way to convince enough people to just vote for them rather than these rich people who don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. I mean, it's something to think about. I know many will argue the idea that, you know, well, you know, we want to make sure we have somebody who's competent and who has a strategic mind and is able to think about these things in a way that's going to, you know, protect America and all of these things. And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, those kinds of people aren't really thinking about the average person and what the average person wants. They'll deign to consider it if it's in their interest, but what's best for you as an average citizen is almost never on the minds of these politicians who are just maneuvering to get either more influence for themselves or more money for themselves or more any of these anythings for themselves. If we actually had like a president of the United States who was just like John Smith, what would that be like? What would it be like if we all just kind of like gathered around candidates who were just average everyday people and voted for somebody who represents who we are as regular people? I think that would be an interesting thing. I think it would be an interesting thing to see. I don't know how that would actually work because obviously, you know, they need to be able to make decisions that are extremely important and powerful. So obviously they're going to be, you know, under pressure from all of the different organizations in the government to do what they're told to do. It would require somebody with a hard head and, you know, the capability of actually reasoning through things to filter out the BS from the, you know, from the actual reality and what's actually going on. I believe that there are, you know, people who aren't in positions of power who have the capability to do that. We would have to find somebody who's like that. But the key, I think, is something along the lines of, we just need people in our government who aren't beholden to anybody, you know? And if we elect people who don't get their positions of power by receiving money from anybody or starting with money or having money come at them in any real way, where the only real thing they're going to get out of their service is the salary that they had, and then, you know, because we'll be able to see, oh, you left with a lot more money than you came in with. Like, it's going to be a lot harder to do shady stuff that we don't want them to do, right? So I don't know. I was just kind of randomly thinking about that. I'm watching a documentary about Russia and Putin and all of that stuff, and you know, it's the same old story there as it is over here. Like, the people who are the most manipulative and the most able to spin things to the way that they want them take power. They don't give a crap about the people under them. And, you know, is that really the kind of person you want leading you into the future? Or would you rather have somebody who ideally comes from the same level of society that you do, making decisions about how things are going to go for the majority of the people? It seems like we should be really thinking about that as an option. So that's all I wanted to say. Just kind of throwing out a random thought out there just to kind of see if the idea goes anywhere and see if anybody, see if enough people agree with that kind of a thing. And, you know, maybe we can start pushing that upwards into the popular conscious as, you know, let's get our government being run by the people who we're governing, who are being governed, rather than these rich people who are completely disconnected from everything we have going on. So anyways, hit that like button, subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and I'll see you for the next one.